Welcome to the FF Forge. My name is Steve, and today is the Saturday report where I will be going over the most recent injury updates, the injury report for the week as of, for the most part, Friday night, and also any news stories of relevance. I can't think of any that would be of any relevance this week. And then we will go over my stock, steals, scraps. And that is sort of a start-sit type section, maybe a sleeper bust type section, if you may, where I will be looking at some of the bigger differences that I have compared to the ECR, the Expert Consensus Rankings. All my rankings are up on the website at www.theffforge.com, link down in the description if you just want to take a check at those. And there are also bookmarks or chapter markers, whatever you want to call them, timestamps that you can jump to each to see what my steals, stocks, and scraps are this week. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, then you can just skip on ahead each one. Let's just get started moving into this with the injury report, starting for the quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield is doubtful, so he'll probably be ruled out soon enough. Russell Wilson and Mac Jones are still questionable. Both of them are expected to be starting, but not guarantees. And Dak Prescott has been ruled in, I believe ruled in, but he's definitely highly expected to be starting. And Kenny Pickett, I believe I saw that he was ruled in, or he's at least highly expected to be starting this week, but he may still be officially questionable. The door is still open for Kenny Pickett to not be playing. But let's move on to the running backs. J.K. Dobbins has been ruled out. We'll go over that a little bit more in the news section. Darrell Williams is out, and Joshua Kelly has been ruled out. That shouldn't matter for anyone. Under questionable, we have Gus Bus, who is been brought back from IR. He's on the eligible to return list at any point. They could activate him this weekend. If they were to do that, I believe Kenyon Drake will make this list somewhere here, and that would change things for just all of the running. I wouldn't really want to trust a Ravens running back this week as long as I could not have to do that. Then DeAndre Swift is still questionable, not a guarantee to start this week. I'm sure if he does, there will be some sort of limitation to how much usage he has, but they've really always done that with him. As far as ruled in here, Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines are not technically ruled in either. They are both also still questionable, but totally expected to be playing this week. And Saquon Barkley has been ruled in just from that shoulder injury yet. As far as the wide receivers that have been ruled out, I don't think there's really any names that are too bad to know about. I mean, Josh Palmer would be maybe the most used one in recent weeks to be aware of. So there's a list. You can always pause and look at that. And here's the questionable list. So Jahan Dotson is questionable. Hunter Renfrow is questionable. They are more than likely to play this week, though, for Hunter. Matt Collins, I believe, is the same story, but he is still questionable, not guaranteed to play. Tyler Lockett, similar to Hunter Renfrow, good news reports on a likelihood that he will be playing this weekend. I believe that might be a late game, so just keep that in mind as far as maybe having a backup there. Josh Reynolds is still listed as questionable this week. Then Keenan Allen is questionable, and there will be a little bit more on him in the news report. Then Rashad Bateman, questionable, expected to play. Sammy Watkins could play this weekend. Jalen Waddle, questionable, and still not a for sure thing. I've said this in the video for the rankings on the tight ends, probably on Mike Gesicki, that if Jalen Waddle were to not be playing, that his value goes way up this week, becomes a really good play, and some people already think he's a good play even with Jalen Waddle in. With both Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne being questionable, if those two were to be ruled out, you start to get a little bit more excited for a Jacoby Myers and or a Tyquan Thornton, especially for DFS type plays for Tyquan Thornton. So just something to keep in the back of the mind for Sunday, and that should be it for the importance there. Then ruled in so far, CeeDee Lamb was ruled in. Don't think that was ever too questionable. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been ruled in. Do like him a lot this week. He is part of the reason why I moved TJ Hawkinson down my list a little bit. He is that short target guy, which I think will be a great way to offset that Dallas pass rush and be just what that offense needs, what the doctor ordered for that offense there. So love Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. Then T. Higgins is in, Jamar Chase is in, so that's very good for that offense and goes along with everything that I've said about some of the players and the game flow that I expect for that game, which I think will come back up in this video again. As far as ruled out here at the tight end position, Logan Thomas, Cameron Brate, Darren Waller all have been ruled out. This will come up. And questionable, we have Mark Andrews is listed questionable, so stay on your toes with that, and I should have at least one guy who's probably available on your waivers that could be a replacement if need be for that. Then Brevin Jordan, Durham Smythe are questionable. If Durham Smythe were to be ruled out, one has to wonder, does that mean Gesicki gets a little bit higher snap share this game, which increases his chance for opportunities? So, especially if you're on the fence about playing Gesicki versus somebody else in your roster, that could be a tiebreaker. Just, something to think about. As far as ruled in, Dalton Schultz is a full bill of health coming in. Pat Freiermuth, I don't believe has officially been ruled in, but he is very much expected to be playing. Hayden Hurst, looks like he was taken off of the injury report. I don't know that he was technically ruled in, though, but he no longer carries a questionable tag, so should be in. And Foster Moreau no longer has a little questionable by his name. So I guess he's healthy and good to go. There was some question if he was going to be playing this week as late as yesterday, but this morning looks good. And we have a shorter list of headlines this week, but that doesn't mean it's not without its excitement. Starting off with Christian McCaffrey and that trade to the 49ers. We all know about it. It's insanity. There's a lot of question marks as to if he'll be playing or not, and I wish I knew I didn't have him for my team this week, because then I would have probably put DeAndre Hopkins in, but thank God I still have Dameon Pierce, Kenneth Walker, and Breece Hall so to start. So I'm still all right, but it would have been nice to know before the game started. Come on. Anyways, as far as McCaffrey goes, I obviously updated my projections on him, gave him a little bit of a higher snap share than I would expect, just to help offset for the quality of the opportunities that he's going to be getting in this game. So I have him as a risky-ish back-end RB2 if he were to start. Of course, a lot of this depends on, take into consideration any news reports coming out, but so far they've been all over the board of he's expected to play and be in the end zone, be used around the end zone in some packages, to it's a long shot for him to play, to he wants to be out there so bad, which I think all of those things are true. It's just a matter of if he plays or not, and that's still up in the air. So if he were to play, running backs tend to drop off before we get all the way through the RB2. I think the upside is worth it with him because of the quality of the opportunities that he would be getting. It depends your roster once again. So me, with those 3 running backs that I have, I feel comfortable just plugging those guys in and not having to worry about it. But a lot of people don't have that luxury. So I really do like the types of targets he would get. This is kind of the stat line I'm expecting. 39 rushing yards, 3 catches for another, we'll say this, around 50 all-purpose yards with 3 catches-ish and probably a touchdown. Opportunity for 2 touchdowns being possible. So half PPR, that's 6.5, 12 points. I'm thinking around that 10 to 14 points is probably what you're looking at, as long as he gets a touchdown. But they're going up against Kansas City, so there should be plenty of opportunities to get touchdowns because their defense is a bit banged up and they're going up against Kansas City. So I like the opportunity there as, once again, a risky flyer for even an RB2 spot. Otherwise, not a bad flex. Depends on what kind of guys you have, really, and what you need out of them this week. Then J.K. Dobbins is expected to be a 4 to 6 week injury for him. Re-injured that knee of his should be having arthroscopic surgery maybe today on that. And so that does things, and that opens up the door for the Gus Bus, who is on track. I saw this report earlier this week too, I think, but just saw it again last night. But there's really we don't know what his track is. So does on track mean he's on track this week to be activated, or does it mean well, I don't know. They have until I think like next week to activate him. Otherwise, he's out for the season. I recall how that works for the NFL. So we should know soon enough, I guess, if he will be playing this season or not. Then we move over to the Keenan Allen news. If he plays, here's another player who's had all sorts of different contradicting reports coming out yesterday about the probability of him playing. But this was, I think, right towards the end of the day, and just seems to be the most likely of situations. If, and it sounds like that might be a big if, Keenan Allen plays, he's going to be on a snap count. So probably not a great play this week to have, and doesn't really alter my thoughts on Mike Williams then this week. You know, the only way he could have moved would have been down as far as my rankings go. And Gerald Everett, I did move back behind like Taysom Hill. As soon as Keenan's back in full, my stock value of Gerald Everett goes down quite a bit. So keep that in mind. That plus Donald Parham coming back will just, I think, make him a fantasy, not someone you can trust anymore. Then Chase Claypool of the Pittsburgh Steelers is on the trade block, so not a bad guy to have on the back end of your roster this weekend. Before game time, pick him up, put him down there if you have that availability, just in case he were to be traded to, I don't know, the Green Bay Packers maybe even. Probably won't be. The upside for Chase Claypool, you have to think, is pretty darn high, so it's possible. Christian McCaffrey really, really wants to play, and the staff is like, wow, don't know if you're ready, like, you don't know the playbook, man. Then it's on to the fun stuff, the steel stock scrap portion. Once again, just like a start and set 'em, but a little bit more advanced. I don't think that's the right word. As far as the rankings go for these little numerals of my ranking, the ECR, for the tight ends and the quarterbacks, they are rest of week, as in I took out the Thursday players and updated those. But for the wide receivers and running backs, my rankings are rest of week. However, the ECR, that becomes a little too much time and effort to move all the guys that need to be moved up one spot or three. So there's going to be a little bit of difference in there to keep in mind for some players, but not a big deal. Then as far as the DFS value plays that I have, those are based on FanDuel pricing, and I did pretty darn good last week, y'all. So keep an eye out for those, and I will go over those right at the end of the video if that's all you want. I'll just recap them. Let's start off with the tight ends, and we're going to start off with the steals for the tight ends. And last week, these are all going to be my one-word rating of how I did. All in all, it was mixed, essentially. But for the tight end steals, it was also mixed. Some good, some bad there between the two that I picked. Foster Moreau this week is one of my steals. I have him ranked 13th. The ECR in him is 30th, going up against Houston. Houston allows the second most fantasy points to the tight end position relative to the mean. Also, Mac Hollins and Hunter Renfrow, as we saw, are listed as questionable. So either one of those goes out, probably helps him out a little bit. Both of them are out. That would definitely, I think, against Houston, that would definitely be make it a safer floor for Foster Moreau. Now, before he got injured earlier around week 4 of the season, he was looking pretty good, getting more usage. I believe he outperformed Darren Waller in some games, fantasy-wise at least. So I do believe they like Foster Moreau. He seems to be working in their system just fine. I think he's a solid play this week. It's a good matchup. Whether or not Hunter Renfrow and Mac Hollins are playing, I like it. Then we move on to one that I'm a little less comfortable with, Greg Dulcich I have him ranked 14th, so I have him 3 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR in him is 17, going up against the New York Jets. Not really a plus matchup there. It's just sort of a neutral-ish matchup. One of my thoughts on this game is that with Russell Wilson being quite injured, throw into the tight end makes a fair amount of sense, especially with having better accuracy when going to the tight end. This has to do as much with other tight end options as anything as to why I have him this high. I think he is a fine option if you need. Then we're going to my stock options for the tight end position, which last week, once again, I had mixed results with. This week, we're going to start off with Pat Freiermuth, who I have ranked 4th. The ECR on him is 10, coming back from injury, going up against Miami. Really, really high upside matchup there, just due to the amount of scoring that could go on. So I like Pat Freiermuth this week. Just, I felt like the ECR is a little bit low on him, but either way, we're saying that he's a starter. So I just wanted to help make you feel a little bit more comfortable with that start. And then the other stock option here is going to be Evan Ingram, who I've ranked 10th. The ECR on him is 11th, going up against the New York Giants. So right along that borderline of being a starter. Now, he has averaged over 5 targets a game. This is a plus matchup there against the New York Giants. Not an excellent matchup, but a plus matchup. Evan Ingram has the 7th most unrealized air yards in the league for tight ends. He has the 6th most deep targets in the league for tight ends. And he has no touchdowns yet, so there's a lot of untapped potential still out there for Evan Ingram. Even though he hasn't reached that untapped potential, there is that nice normal tight end safe floor for finishing anywhere between tight end 8 to tight end 18 on any given week with those 5 targets that he's been getting, relatively decent average yards per target. So he's just a nice safer floor option with just waiting to have a good week. So, trust the experts, trust me on Evan Ingram this week in that matchup. And then we'll move on to our tight end scraps, where I did bad last week. I'm sorry, I gave you bad advice. I know Robert Tonyan was on there again, so we'll see how this could go bad again. So I have Mike Gesicki up here. I have him ranked 18th. The ECR on him is 14th, going up against Pittsburgh. It's not like it's some terrible matchup there. My issue with Mike Gesicki this week, I talked about in the rankings video, so the real short version of it, Waddle and Tyreek Hill will get wide open, and you just won't have to check that ball down too often. Dalton Schultz, also, not a bad matchup here, going up against Detroit. I have him ranked 20th, the ECR is 18, so just a couple spots behind the ECR there. I know you'll probably want to start him this week, Dalton Schultz owners, but I would just wait a week. That PCL injury could hamper him a little bit. Just wait a week to see things out. And my DFS value play, last week I did very good on the tight ends. I gave you 2 of them. I believe it was the New York Giants, Bellinger, and Dawson Knox. And I gave myself a very good rating on that because they were both quite cheap for what you got for them. They didn't have, massive weeks, but they should have allowed you to pay for somebody else who had a really good week. And as far as Foster Moreau goes this week, I just spoke about that. I like the matchup and everything, and he's quite cheap. So I like that as a value play. And just a heads up on my value plays, they truly are think more like tournament play value plays for in general is where I'm coming from. I'm looking for the as cheap as I can go with some level of confidence in the upside and actually meeting that upside and hopefully not totally busting, or at least I'll try to let you know if I think it's like a super boom or bust type option. So now let's move on to the quarterbacks. And last week for the steals, I had mixed results. This week, I'm going to start off with Jimmy Garoppolo, who I have ranked as 7th. The ECR on him is 12, going up against Kansas City. Really like that upside. Going down the road, he might be somebody to just keep on rosters now, or somebody to pick up if he's out on your waiver wire with Christian McCaffrey coming in town. Oh, I did not mention this when talking. Is there a better perfect marriage for real-world football than Christian McCaffrey and the Niners? This is an insane opportunity. This should be awesome, cool, fun. Hopefully, there's 2 reasons why this is the perfect marriage, and one of them's a very bad thing, and that is running back injuries and Christian McCaffrey's recent history of injuries. I don't think he's some super injury-prone guy yet, but I will say the season he got injured, I was worried about that because of all this lifting and strength that's you put too much force on your tendons as a smaller guy like that who cuts a lot, and all it takes is your leg to be planting, you pushing all this force up in one direction and somebody else hitting you, and what happened is what can happen. So I prefer flexible running backs compared to guys who can squat 1,000 pounds when they're a smaller running back. Big guy running back who's just going straight up and down, isn't cutting, doing agility type things, then give me all the muscle. But beyond the point, Jimmy Garoppolo is one of my steals, and Matt Ryan is my other steal. I have him ranked at 13th. The ECR on him is 15th. Going up against Tennessee this week. Tennessee allows the 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback position relative to the mean, so a pretty decent matchup there for an offense that has been starting to click. I expect it to be an efficient game for probably both offenses to some extent. Early game is going to probably dictate some of the skill players and how they perform, including Matt Ryan quite a bit. So hopefully Derrick Henry gets off to a nice quick start, breaks off like an 88-yard run just to start the game. That would work well. I'd like that for fantasy points for everybody. Then let's move on to my stock options. And last week I did almost good. I had Aaron Rodgers in here. I think I did good because I really didn't end up saying, hey, you should play Aaron Rodgers. I ended up going with, if you've been playing him all season, this isn't the week to to stop playing him. And I kind of said that under the assumption that, like, most y'all haven't continued to be playing Aaron Rodgers, right? I don't think you have been. So, almost good. Not good. Almost good, because my other stock option did do good. That's going to be loud. Then this week I have Marcus Mariota in at 14th. The ECR in him is 14th, going up against Cincinnati. Do you expect Cincinnati to go for the quick juggernaut, go for the throat there early in the game, get some Jamar Chase big play? Do expect them to find success in doing that and building an early lead, which is going to force Atlanta to have to pass the ball more, which is going to be a good thing for, for playmakers on that offense, like Marcus Mariota, compared to them just being able to run the ball all game. So I believe that's the game plan. I believe Cincinnati will find some success doing that, and that will give more opportunities for quarterback, wide receiver, tight end there in Atlanta. Now, on to Dak Prescott, my other stock option, and he's only being started in 55% of leagues, so that is why he is up here. Put him in there, start him, going up against Detroit, man. Like, this is a great matchup. I have him at 8th, the ECR on him is 6th. Just trust it. Go with it. Trust it. Put Dak Prescott in. This should be higher. Now, on to the scraps, which I had mixed results with last week. A lot of mixed results. Once again, I'm going to go back to the well because Trevor Lawrence was the reason that I did not have good results. And I have Trevor Lawrence ranked 15th. The ECR in him is 11, going up against the New York Giants. It's not a terrible matchup, not a great matchup for Trevor Lawrence this week. The only thing is last week, if you take away his 2 rushing touchdowns, which very easily could have gone to somebody else, could have not been passing touchdowns at all, he has around 10 fantasy points in most scoring formats. 1 passing touchdown, like 160 or 80 passing yards, and 25 rushing yards. Rough. I think it was 25. Statistically, not a great Trevor Lawrence game. I have a hard time suggesting him as a high-end starter in a not great matchup here, based on his performance last week. Can't discount the rushing touchdowns. That is something that is in his profile, but not believe in it. Totally. I mean, I like Trevor Lawrence. I've said all season long he's somebody to keep an eye on and have on your, he should be rostered, but don't love him as a starter. Now on to Russell Wilson. He is still being started in 28% of leagues. I believe that's too high. ESPN leagues. So Russell Wilson I have him ranked 20th, 4 spots behind the ECR. The ECR in him is 16th. That is why he ends up making my scrap list. That along with that start percentage, going up against the New York Jets. Not a very great matchup, did I? Yeah, the New York Jets allow the 9th least fantasy points to the quarterback position relative to the mean. So not really a plus matchup at all by any means there. And Russell Wilson picked up another injury last week. Like, how many times are we going to say you can start him? I got him in, don't start him territory there for a lot of leagues. Now, for my DFS value plays, where I did bad last week on the quarterbacks, the only position I did bad on, I believe all the others were good. And this week, I have a Jacoby Brissett in as your the cheap option there. Not a super high option, but if you are just looking to save a buck and get a guy who should perform fine, there you go. Then Kenny Pickett costs you a little bit more, but has a higher ceiling in that matchup. And then I think just a few bucks more, or maybe it was the same price. I think it was just a little bit higher than Kenny Pickett, was Geno Smith. He was pretty darn cheap. So there's my true value play there for Geno Smith, is the one that I have the most balance between cost and chance of producing. Now it is time for the running back steals, where I did okay last week. I did fine. I believe I had that as good, and then I was like, to be fair, I only did okay. So this week, I have Damian Harris up here as a steal. I have him ranked 21st as of last evening. The ECR on Damian Harris was 54. That was already trending up. Now, that is the Monday night game, but it is really, really looking like he's going to be playing this week against Chicago Monday night, and that is a good matchup. The Bears allow the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position relative to the mean. I see no reason why him and Ramondre can't be feasting in this game. I projected him just close to what his pre-injury numbers were for all those weeks that he was healthy. Didn't have the super highest usage. I only changed did a small tweaking to give Ramondre Stevenson a little bit more work than pre-injury Damian Harris, and Damian Harris a little bit less. I just took some shavings and switched them around there. So I'm expecting Damian Harris to walk back into essentially his role with maybe just a little bit more trust on from the coaching staff and Ramondre Stevenson, and just reward for his performance so far for the team. But I still like Damian Harris a lot because that is a good matchup, and I would feel comfortable playing both Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris as a super high floor this week and expect 2 touchdowns out of that, at least. So really like Damian Harris. Like I said, he's trending up, but I don't know how high that'll go, so I wanted to make sure to point that out to you guys. Kenyon Drake was not actually trending up. I thought he would have been, but this was before the news was official for J.K. Dobbins, so he's probably trending up as of today. But I have him ranked 18th. The ECR on him is 33rd, going up against Cleveland. And Cleveland allows the 4th most fantasy points to the running back position relative to the mean, and Kenyon Drake has the 5th highest yards per touch in the league for all qualifying running backs with 6.1 yards per touch. It's a good matchup. Kenyon Drake has some things working in favor of him as far as production goes, or efficiency on his production. So I like that quite a bit. Once again, if Gus Bus comes back, flip that on its head. Kenyon Drake becomes super untrustworthy with some upside, I would say. Let's move on to the stocks where I did bad last week. No other way to put it. So this week I have Tony Pollard in here. Have him ranked 24th. The ECR on him is 24th. Going up against Detroit. Really, really like him a lot this week. Just like we like Ezekiel Elliott this week. It's a good matchup with a lot of upside. Why not like both Pollard and Zeke? And then the other stock option that we have is Ramondre Stevenson. I have him at 9th. ECR on him is 8th. I feel that some people may get concerned about starting him with Damian Harris coming back. If you look at the usage prior to the injury, Ramondre Stevenson was still getting on the field more than Harris already. It was just some of those touchdowns, some of those high-end things that Damian Harris was getting. But other than that, Ramondre Stevenson had a lot of factors working in his favor. If I recall correctly, Damian Harris was just performing better at the time for fantasy-wise, and largely due to the types of opportunities that he was getting. But they were both getting a lot of opportunities anyways. So feel fine playing Ramondre Stevenson here against Chicago, who, as I said, allows the 8th most fantasy points to the running back position. On to the scraps for the running back position, and we're going to start out with Brian Robinson, a guy who I actually kind of like this week. He is my 30th ranked running back. The ECR in him is 25, going up against Green Bay. It's not a smash matchup in the running game against Green Bay, even though statistically there are a lot of things that Green Bay has working against them, but fantasy point wise they have not allowed a crap load of points to the running back position. It's almost a neutral matchup, and Brian Robinson is in a three-way backfield to some extent. Their passing defense sucks, so as if Green Bay can get their passing game going early enough on in this game anyways, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick get a little bit more use probably than B-Rob. There's a lot of factors that have me concerned to the point where I don't feel comfortable with him as a high-end flex option, but he is a flex option that I'm hoping gets into the end zone more than anything. But, just like last week, could see this game flow not being what we would expect for the Green Bay Packers, and that would really be bad for A.J. Dillon this week, and it's very possible that Green Bay does not take advantage of this poor Washington pass defense because their passing offense is kind of what's holding them back. We'll see this week, but I have the other running back on the other team here, A.J. Dillon. I have him ranked 29th, the ECR on him is 26th, and I actually might flip-flop these two and put Brian Robinson one spot ahead of A.J. Dillon in my rankings. Haven't done that yet, but while I was making this last night, I was like, I think there's a higher chance that Brian Robinson falls into the end zone or has a big run than A.J. Dillon. For A.J. Dillon, I have him 3 spots behind the ECR going up against Washington. Washington allows the 8th least fantasy points to the running back position relative to the mean. It's not a good matchup. If one of those running backs from Green Bay is going to have a good week, it's probably Aaron Jones this week, not A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is more of your power back for the most part. He's shown he can catch and everything, but he's more of your power back, and that's what Washington is good at stopping. So I just don't like the efficiency for him this game, and it's not a guaranteed game flow that will work in favor for him either. Now for my DFS value plays, where I did good last week, and this week I have several options. So Gus Edwards, if he were to be playing, super cheap. He could be an upside play that I would say even in that contrarian play grouping there. Then Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard are both cheap. I would go Deontay over Chuba. Ultimately, don't really love any of those options. You gotta pay up a little bit more. And that's where I found Raheem Mostert too. Definitely my DFS value play of the week. Those are just some options that if you really, really want to go dirt cheap, you could go down that low. And then I do have a contrarian play here in Rachaad White. Could see Tampa Bay click on offense, get up to some sort of bigger lead in this game, and then bring in Rachaad White and get some extra usage, and he could take advantage of that. So he's a super sneaky play this week. And that brings us to the wide receivers to wrap this up. Starting off with the steals here, where I did very bad. And I came back and updated this from bad to very bad after I gave myself a very good in the stock section. It only felt fair because I guess I did very bad for the steals last week for the wide receivers. Now this week we're going to go at it again. And I've got Rashad Bateman in here. He has only started in 18% of leagues right now. Believe it's looking like he's going to play, so felt comfortable enough putting him in here. To remind you to dust him off of your shelf and get him into your lineup. I have him ranked 29th, give him into a 3 wide receiver league or a flex option. I have him ranked 29th. The ECR on him is 47th currently. I'm sure that will go up, but I don't know how high up, so I just wanted to make sure that you heard this somewhere, that Rashad Bateman's a good play this week. Going up against Cleveland. Cleveland allows the 5th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position relative to the mean. So I like him this week in what could be an interesting game. And then my other steal is going to be Drake London. I have him ranked 17th. The ECR in him is 25th. They are going up against Cincinnati. This is one of those game flow things for me. I am expecting the Atlanta Falcons to have to throw more in this game if they want to have a chance at winning. And that obviously benefits guys like Drake London. So I like him this week. It's not like it's some sort of smash hit matchup against Cincinnati. They're pretty decent against the pass. I like Drake London. That was I have him in starting territory, and the ECR on him's just outside of it. So it felt like somebody I should point out. Now on to the stocks, where I did very good last week. I told you who to play, who not to play here, and nailed it. This week, the experts, myself, we're telling you to start Brandon Cooks. I don't remember what his start percentage was, but it was low enough that I felt I needed to throw out a reminder there. Going up against Las Vegas. Las Vegas allows the third most fantasy points to the wide receiver position relative to the mean. It's a good matchup. He gets the volume. You got to play him if you've got him. Almost surely. There's a lot of upside that you don't want to miss out on. Jerry Jeudy and Alec Pierce I also have as stocks, and this is sort of a Jerry Jeudy I have ranked 36th. The ECR in him is 31, so I have him just outside of that. As a back-end wide receiver, 3 outside of being a high-end flex option, basically out of flex territory for a 2-wide receiver league. I don't love him. Going up against the New York Jets, not the worst matchup, but not a good matchup. I don't see the upside with an injured and not playing well so far Russell Wilson there. I, however, would suggest a guy like Alec Pierce that you could have gotten off of the waiver wires, not trusting your Jerry Jeudy. I'm saying go right ahead and just play him. I have him ranked 30th. The ECR on him is 36th, so just kind of the opposite of Jerry Jeudy there. Going up against Tennessee, not a terrible matchup. I expect those wide receivers to do pretty good in this game, just efficiency-wise. On to the scraps, where I had some mixed results last week yet again. Terry McLaurin, I'm slightly gently but kind of tossing over into the scrap pile. He is being started in 61% of leagues. I have him ranked at 34th. The ECR on him is 26th. A fair difference there, going up against Green Bay. Now, Green Bay allows the 4th least fantasy points to the wide receiver position relative to the mean. They allow the least pass attempts in the league per game, and their defense allows the 6th least yards per completion. Now, what is Terry McLaurin usually doing to get a lot of points? Big plays. Not really the thing that Green Bay is known for giving up this season. Don't really like the upside for Terry McLaurin, and do think that the downside, as we know, is pretty low. DJ Moore, who is still being started in 50% of leagues. Why? He is ranked 40th for me, and thus, I wanted to put him even lower, but I understand why some people are going to be playing him this week. The ECR on him is 34th. Going up against Tampa Bay. Not some terrible matchup this season, but not a great one. Of course, DJ Moore is the last standing piece in that offense that you expect any kind of volume to go to. So he is a high volume option, maybe. Carolina's going to try to run the ball as much as they can. PJ Hill, what's his name? PJ Walker. I liked him in the XX league, whatever. PJ Walker's the quarterback. Hasn't done too well for DJ Moore even in the past, for fantasy football reasons, real football reasons. Not a great quarterback really in the NFL. And you gotta have some better options than DJ Moore, right? That's too high there, 50%. On to the DFS Value Play, where I did meh last week. I think I was going to give myself a good, and then I changed it to a meh because it was just meh. This week, Olamide Zaccheaus going up against Cincinnati. Olamide is just bursting at the seams with efficiency, man. He is ready to have a big game. And going up against Cincinnati, a team that I expect to get up high, get up on them, get a big lead early in the game against them, is just the type of recipe for one of those guys who's just ready to go. So I do like Olamide Zaccheaus, dirt cheap. Don't know how high the ceiling is exactly, but this is the type of the game where just one of those surprise weeks could happen. And then also have Mac Hollins on the pretty dirt cheap there, going up against Houston. Not a super great high fantasy ceiling option, but I do as far as the matchup goes there. But especially if like Hunter Renfrow were to be out, you gotta like him this week. With Hunter Renfrow in, he's still pretty darn cheap. That's the attractive part, just not a super high ceiling. And that's where we come to the recipe for a high ceiling and confidence in the potential to hit that ceiling as well, and that's Nico Collins. Going up against Las Vegas, if he's healthy this week, he is on the questionable side of things, but he was heating up before the bye week injury, both. He's been heating up, going throughout the season, improving every week. This could be it is a good matchup there against Las Vegas for passing game. Him or Brandon Cooks could have a huge game. Maybe they both have pretty good games even. So this is a good week for him. Good price. That's it. So that's my DFS value plays. We'll just go with my top one here to wrap things up. Nico Collins is my wide receiver value pick. Then I have Raheem Mostert as my running back value pick. Then we've got Geno Smith as a value play for the quarterback. And also Foster Moreau in at tight end for my value plays. Went a little long today. I love you very much. Thank you very much for stopping on through. And all my rankings are up on the website. Should have put this up. Should have said this earlier. Maybe I'll cut this in earlier. All right, peace out.